he was trained as part of a generation of scholars in the social sciences in the United States who became involved in developing Brazilian studies. This is how he retrained from being someone who worked on a doctoral dissertation that focused on the economics of German Reconstruction to someone who worked later on Brazil's steel industry. And that emergence of Brazilian studies as we understand it today, it really was the fruit of a way of thinking about building a field that he and his colleague here at the University of Illinois, Joe Love, and others created a real mold for doing this. And that mold wasn't that Brazilian studies was not something that they did by talking to each other in the United States about Brazil. It was a way of building bridges and building dialogue between scholars in Brazil and scholars in the United States.
Até os anos 60, a economia no Brasil vinha da tradição francesa, mais literária, mais textual, e iniciava-se o ensino da economics, ou teoria econômica. Alguns professores começaram internamente a tratar desse tema, mas o Werner foi fundamental em trazer essa nova visão e enviar professores para estudarem nos Estados Unidos para depois voltarem já com essa visão. Então, a maneira de analisar a economia no Brasil mudou muito depois da participação do Werner.
Como aluno da disciplina de economia brasileira, ele era os livros deles, os textos, os artigos deles, eram leitura obrigatória. E se não era obrigatória, era leitura que a gente acabava chegando quando queria se aprofundar. E eu estava muito interessada em economia brasileira nesse período de graduação. E o trabalho do Werner me chamou a atenção pela organização do tratamento dos dados, ao mesmo tempo sobre o cuidado histórico que o professor Werner tinha com a descrição das políticas, dos períodos, da conjuntura, fazendo sempre uma análise relacionada aos dados que ele apresentava. Ou seja, muito rigoroso, mas ao mesmo tempo muito atraente do ponto de vista histórico. Então, e isso foi tão importante para mim. Na realidade, ele não foi o único brasilianista, importante na minha formação de economista, mas eu diria que ele foi o principal.
Werner was also a great explainer of issues in the economics of Latin America that other economists were not very good at explaining, and most political scientists at the time were not good at understanding. And so I continue to use in my PhD seminar in political science articles that Werner wrote a half century ago, trying to explain what was the difference between monetarism and structuralism to try to understand the functioning of an economy in a Latin American country. This could be said of any economy, but in particular in a Latin American country. And those issues, though the language and the examples are different, but the analytical framework remains pertinent today when one is trying to understand how a central bank works and what is the relation between the central bank and the behavior of businesses.
He was one of the first people who reached out to me when I came to this campus in 1998. He found out that I had worked on Brazil as part of my dissertation, so he contacted me very quickly from when I set foot on campus and asked me to be part of a group of Illinois professors who were working in Brazil. They had a grant to do exchange through the Hewlett Foundation, and that was very influential on my career, brought into that group. So I value that connection very much. And he was a role model to me in terms of how to build a network, how to engage with Brazil, I benefited a lot from his connections. So if I was going somewhere, you know, who does Werner know in this place, and that opened a lot of doors. So we have that, and I miss him a lot. So it's like I said, there's some parts on campus that I still kind of expect to see him there, and it's sad that he's not there anymore. It was a big shock when he passed away. None of us saw that happening so quickly.
I wouldn't have gone to graduate school, certainly not at Vanderbilt, specialized in the Brazilian economy, and it hadn't been for Werner Baer. Wouldn't have written the thesis that I wrote on Brazil if it hadn't been for Werner Baer. Wouldn't have got funding to do my research in Brazil without Werner Baer. Wouldn't have got my first jobs in academia without Werner's help. And my first book, which came out of my thesis, that was Werner Baer too. So he had an enormous impact on me and by extension my family in those early years. But it's important to say too that what I'm most grateful for is really our friendship. And friendships need to be nurtured. Friendships require contact. And it was always Werner. And for many years, it might not be more than a letter in the old days, or more recent years, an email, a quick phone call, an invitation to go out to the University of Illinois, a reminder that he'd be in the New York area where I was based, and he was free for lunch and dinner, a suggestion that we gather a group of friends to talk about Brazil or whatever. He was always taking that extra time to stay in touch with a friend.
Eu acho que o professor Werner Baer teve papel fundamental no desenvolvimento da pós-graduação em economia no Brasil e da formação dos primeiros centros dessa pós-graduação, de formação de pesquisadores. Então você tem gerações e gerações, na verdade, de pesquisadores brasileiros das mais diferentes regiões que foram levados para a Universidade de Illinois, alguns deles entre os primeiros brasileiros que tiraram seus PhDs em economia, que devem isso a ele, né? Então o papel dele realmente foi fundamental nesse processo e foi um papel de muito longo prazo.
Ele apoiava, ele orientava, ele auxiliava, mas ele não pedia nada em contrapartida nesse sentido, né, de querer indicar o aluno o que fazer. Ele dava sempre a liberdade para o aluno em escolher os seus áreas de estudo, suas áreas de especialização, de forma que isso foi muito importante, não só para mim, mas como vários alunos brasileiros que foram estudar em Illinois. Eu acho que essa característica do Werner deve ser bem ressaltada e sempre lembrada, né? A capacidade de ajudar, mas ao mesmo tempo de dar liberdade, de incentivar que o próprio aluno decidisse, né, o que estudar, o que pesquisar e o que desenvolver.
It was exhilarating because he was full of enthusiasm, and he had a way of getting you to do things, and that was to say, "I've done my part. Is yours ready yet?" And one thing that made him so unusual, I think, was the fact that he not only recruited graduate students from Brazil, he made special trips to Brazil to recruit graduate students, but he recruited Illinois undergraduates, graduates, and he even recruited professors. He would say, "Well, I can get you a grant to go to Brazil. Why don't you go down there with me and we'll write an article, or you'll find some subject in your specialty, your methodological specialty to write about." And so he was constantly working for his profession, for his students, and for his fellow faculty members. It was really exhilarating to work with him all that period since the 1970s. It was a tremendous loss for us, of course, and for the whole profession of economics and specialists in Brazil.
He had boundless energy, and this boundless energy was completely invested into training students and building up the context for Brazilian studies here on campus. I mean, it's really an extraordinary thing. You never saw him without 4 or 5 students in tow. And he was a real advocate for these students too, right? You could see him, in cada canto, like in every corner of the university, opening doors for them, making sure that their funding was taken care of, making sure that they were getting into the courses they needed. He could be very tenacious about making sure that things got taken care of.
When it came time to put our heads together to see whether this Le Mans dialogue made sense, putting together the four great universities that the Le Mans Foundation supports, it was Werner Baer, who once again provided the connective tissue for all those schools and kind of the wherewithal to put the Le Mans dialogue in place. So I think it's very fitting that we have this opportunity, that our colleagues at Harvard have opened this opportunity to speak about Werner at this dialogue, which he did so much to create and to get going. And I think somewhere, somehow, he knows about it now, and he wishes us all well.